Earthquake bombshell. Sea tides have been found to be able to trigger tectonic tremors. Earthquakes can be triggered by low sea tides. This is what a seismic new study discovered. This is by Tom Fish on Express UK. Well, we learned that from what they told us recently concerning the waves on the lake of Yellowstone. They said even the waves on Yellowstone Lake, if they're strong enough, can cause an earthquake to occur over the caldera. As we know, the lake, Yellowstone Lake, sits on top of the caldera. The lake is on top of the roof of the magma chamber. Can you imagine? That's unbelievable. And all the people that go there looking at the lake and say, oh, how beautiful, how exquisite, how pristine, how natural and wonderful. And they're actually standing on top of the caldera. Oh my God. All right, so we learned that from them a couple of months back. And so this is no surprise that this happens here as well. Earthquakes to be triggered by low sea tides. Earthquakes create seismic waves, and they're capable of flattening entire cities, as we know, and making early detection and earthquake predictions critical. Scientists have realized for years now how earthquakes along the ocean's underwater mountain ranges, the edges of tectonic plates, subduction zones, things like that, are linked with the tides, but nobody until now could understand why there is an increase in tremors during the low tides. Professor Christopher Schultz, Columbia University seismologist, said everyone was sort of stumped because according to conventional theory, those earthquakes should occur at high tides. But the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory team have now uncovered the mechanism for this apparent paradox, and it is the magma below the mid-ocean ridges that is responsible. It's something similar to what we have seen with the melting glaciers and ice caps. They release their weight from the tectonic plates, and that's why there's an increase of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions because of the pressure that has been released from there. So this is something similar with earthquakes and tides and low tides. Professor Schultz co-led the study. He explained that it's the magma chamber breathing, expanding, contracting due to the tides, and that's what's making the faults move. The low tide correlation is surprising because of the way the mid-ocean faults move. Mid-ocean faults. That explains why perhaps we had an earthquake in Hawaii, in the Pacific, in the middle of the Pacific, on the hotspot, right smack in the middle, and at the same exact time and the same exact size earthquake magnitude, we had Yellowstone, which is just east of the Rockies. As we know, the Rockies are at the subduction zone, the Pacific plate going underneath the North American plate, and that's where Yellowstone is. The plate is subducting right under there. It is considered to be part of the Ring of Fire. And we were wondering why that was taking place. Our friend Ben Fiorulo noticed that because he was analyzing Yellowstone earthquakes at the same time he was also analyzing Hawaii earthquakes. And it seems that tectonic plates, something happened in the middle of the plate and caused on both sides of the plate, on the east side, on the west coast of the US, plus in the middle on the hotspot of Hawaii, something to take place simultaneously. And not only that, when we had a major earthquake in Yellowstone, I think it was 1959 or something, magnitude 7.3, and we're still feeling the aftershocks of that huge earthquake even up to now, the geologists say. Well, that earthquake caused the water in the wells in Hawaii to lower. It decreased, and they were wondering why that happened. It happened because of the Yellowstone earthquake. You can imagine, half a world away, it had an effect on the water wells. Amazing. Which means that the water current somehow changed because of that earthquake. It shook the area. So we see that, the activity in the tectonic plates obviously is felt widely. Now, the fault is described as a tilted plane that separates two blocks of Earth. That's a fault. During movement, the upper block slides down with respect to the lower one. We're talking about a subduction zone here. There's all types of earthquakes. That's a subduction zone earthquake. We also have volcanic earthquakes or tectonic earthquakes. Now, scientists anticipate, or even man-made earthquakes, but anyway, scientists anticipate that at high tides, when there is more water sitting on top of the fault, it would push the upper block down and cause the earthquakes. That's what they anticipated concerning high tides. But instead, the fault slips down during low tide, when forces are actually pulling upwards, which is the opposite of what they would expect. This is what Schultz explains. That was a surprise to them. The team studied the axial volcano, that's along the Juan de Fuca Ridge in the Pacific Ocean. You know, we have the Juan de Fuca plate is, of course, just into the Pacific Ocean west of the west coast of California and the Cascadia area. Now, because the volcano regularly erupts approximately every 10 years, that's pretty much, isn't it? The axial volcano erupting every 10 years. Scientists formed a dense network of ocean bottom instruments in order to monitor this. The data from those instruments was used to model and explore different ways the low tides could be causing these tremors. And it is a component that no one else before considered, that it could be responsible for these tremors. The volcano's magma chamber, which is a soft pressurized pocket below the surface, is responsible. The team realized when the tide is low tide, there is less water sitting on top of this chamber, so the chamber is able to expand, and that's what it does. Because there's not it's like a balloon. A balloon, when you put your hand on it, of course it doesn't try to come up, but when you take your hand off, release your hand off the top of a balloon, it comes back up again. The team realizes when the tide is low, there's less water sitting on top of the chamber, so it expands. As it rises, it strains the rocks around it, forcing the lower block to slide up the fault and causing earthquakes in the process. Also, Schultz explained, the tidal earthquakes in this region are so sensitive that we can see details in the response that nobody could ever see before. When the team compared the earthquake rate versus the stress on the fault, they realized even the smallest stress could trigger an earthquake. The tidal data helped to calibrate this effect, but the triggering stress could be caused by anything. It could be caused by things like seismic waves from another earthquake, or fracking wastewater pumped into the ground. There we go. Of course, those are man-made earthquakes. He said, people in the hydrofracking business want to know, is there some safe pressure you can pump and make sure you don't produce any earthquakes? And the answer that we find is that there is not any safe pressure. That anything you put and produce into the earth would cause an earthquake. It said it can happen at any level of stress. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.